Good morning, everybody. I am out for a walk because I woke up and stupidly opened my phone and went to YouTube and was immediately inundated with so much fucking bullshit, so many lies that I couldn't stand it. So I had to get up and walk. Even my fat ass just had to go get some energy out. So let's see. In the last week, we've been told that, and this has been going on for years, but a real fast, quick, hard assault has come saying that this election is an existential threat to democracy, a threat to America, that if you don't make the right choice, you're going to land up under authoritarian fascist control. Now, in previous videos, I've explained to you that the definition of fascism is the government owns the means of production, and that they do. Through a variety of sub-fucking organizations and things like that, they control whether or not you get to drill for oil. They get to control whether or not you can get lumber that we need. They control where you can farm. They control a lot of things, right? So they absolutely have control over means of production because they have control over access to resources, right? Now, an example of how that affects your life is pretty simple. Some years back, they mandated the COVID vaccine in California and everywhere in America, pretty much, for workers, right? Now, I'm not going to relitigate that shit. What I will say is that the unions in California have a pretty good amount of authority, and when you tell a bunch of dock workers that if they don't get this shot, they don't get to work, none of them go to work, and you can't fire them. And so then when you saw on your TV the pictures of dozens and dozens of ships sitting off the coast of California that couldn't be unloaded, it was due to the vaccine. Did anybody in your media tell you? No. They didn't care to tell you. You're not important. You're not even pawns in their game. You're the squares. Hey, puppy. You're just the squares that they step on, and they use their troops to step on to get what they want. Now, that said, that's just an example. There's plenty more to be had. But let's get back to the idea of existential threats to democracy. Now, down here, just at the end of this road, there is a gas station. Now, 4 years ago, gas at that gas station was about $1.10. There was no homeless people, because this is the far end of Tucson. This isn't Tucson Central. This is out in what used to be the suburbs, right? And there's a supermarket there, and there's it's just a normal shopping center, right? And when the economy's good, it's a nice shopping center. And when the economy's not good, it's a bad shopping center. So, in their wonderful wisdom, the city of Tucson decided, you know how we can make this homeless problem look less bad? Let's make bus fare free. And so every morning, hundreds of homeless people get out of their shelters down in the main city and their fucking drug dens and their tents, and then they hop on the bus and they spread across Tucson, and then they find the quickest piece of cardboard they can get a hold of, and they put a sign up saying, "Give me money." And I'm not judging them. What I am saying is that when you spread out the problem so people can't see it, you're attempting to lie to the people, right? So you turn the public transportation system into move a panhandler. Basically, the bus system has become a tool to move drug addicts all over the city and back again at the end of the day so they can buy drugs with the money that they panhandled. And that way they're not all piled up in one space where people can point at Skid Row or whatever like they do in LA. Same gas station. Every couple of nights a week, I go down there because I go every day down to that corner, and there's a young lady, nice, kind as far as I can tell. She's friendly, says hello, holds the door for you when you walk into the gas station, so on. But at times, I see her get into this car. And other times she's in that car. And then third time it's another car. And fourth time it's another car. And so what you can deduce is that that's her meeting spot to pick up her Johns so that she can get paid to give her body over for sex. That's her life. That's how she pays her bills. Might have kids at home, God for fucking bid. But she's doing what she can to keep them away from that by going to the local gas station and using it as her meetup spot. Sometimes it's veterans. Sometimes it's guys in wheelchairs. And a lot of times the panhandlers are people who just need money to pay their rent, like across the street. Because they just can't make it. They just can't make it. Like, don't judge those fucking people. Please. Stop. That's not helpful. It's easy to look at the poor, right? And say, you're the fucking problem. That's what they want you to fucking do. But the average mortgage in America currently is $2,800 a month. And nobody who's paying that mortgage wants to rent out their house to you for less than that mortgage. So the rent is even higher. Everywhere. That's everywhere in America. $2,800 a month. Now, maybe you've got a good job. You make 100 something a year, 80, 90, something like that. And after you're done paying that mortgage, you have a couple bucks to pay your HOA fees, your constantly rising electric bill, your gas bill, your water bill. At my house in Virginia, I get 3 separate water bills. 3 separate water bills. And it adds up on people. Our government helped fund the infrastructure for all these cell phone towers you see. They funded it. A good portion of it. They paid a lot of fucking money so that everybody could have cell phone access. And yet, I get my cell phone bill and I keep as many of my family members on it as I can because I am my brother's keeper. And it's over $400 a month for 5 phone lines through Verizon, which has gotten more government help than almost any other country, short of AT&T. Seems like a good time to point out that when people talk about MAGA, whatever, and then other people go, what's so great about America? Like, when was it ever great? Well, 1982, the year I was born, AT&T got broken up by the federal government. And they subsequently spent the next fucking 42 years paying off Congress people to help them rebuild it. And now they are the largest telecom company in the world again. It's just one thing the government could do to make things better. Is just stop taking fucking money. So while your inflation has gone up and you have not seen pay increases to match it, Congress, their income of each individual member, their net worth is increasing 2- and 3-fold a year, right? So they're not just beating inflation or matching inflation. They're fucking crushing it. Absolutely crushing it. And now who knows who pays off the Supreme Court, who pays off whoever, right? There was also a time in this country that a government job was kind of considered nice because you could get a pension. When all the other companies were moving away from them, you get a pension, right? And people like that. If they stay loyal, they hang around, they put up with the bullshit, they get a pension. Well, I retired from the Air Force 3 years ago. $60,000 a year between my pension and my disability, and inflation has ruined it. I could have never worked again for the rest of my life. I could have let other people have the jobs. I wouldn't have needed to take a seat at the table because I don't ask for much. I don't want much. My daily expenses include whatever my wife needs, and she is very good about that, and 2 packs of cigarettes, 1 6-pack of beer. That's roughly my daily expenses. And it's unaffordable in this economy. It's too much to ask that a guy who serves his country for 20 fucking years has a couple extra bucks to have a 6-pack after putting up with all that fucking bullshit. Pack of cigarettes out here in Tucson, it's $10 a pack for a pack of Marlboro Reds. Now, my government openly admits that previous people in Congress, so the government, got paid off to help the tobacco lobby make sure that they got as many kids addicted as possible. Absolutely, as many children addicted as possible, and I was one of them. They openly admit that they did that. And yet, they consistently raise the price of my fucking cigarettes. So they say they created the addiction, and then they say they're going to charge me more for my addiction because I shouldn't have my addiction. Now, I'm going to tell you a series of stories. Last year, met a kid who was working with me on a job. He was a temporary employee. He had just come out of jail, not prison, but jail. And if you don't know that there's a difference, you're part of the problem. You shouldn't probably even be voting. But comes out of jail, and he gets this job. He's doing his best because he's got a kid and he wants to stay straight and clean. The problem is, when he went to jail, he didn't have a drug addiction. And then he got there, and the administrators of this prison, jail, whatever, said, hey, if you've got a drug problem, don't buy drugs from other inmates that have been smuggled in. We can help you get clean. Here's this pharmaceutical product that can get you clean. We can give it to you, it'll be safe, it'll be effective, blah, blah, blah. The problem is, when you put young men and women in jail, and you park them in hell all day, and then you offer them an escape, they're going to take it. And so by the hundreds and thousands, people are entering our prison system, our justice system, with no drug addiction problems, and then being handed them by the government. Right? And then when they get back on the street, they certainly can't afford to live, because who fucking can these days? You gotta remember that the poverty line in America is like $31,000. It's not massive money. Now, I understand that if you make $31,000, that makes you the top 1% of income earners in the world. But that's the difference in making $1 million in California or making $1 million in a state that doesn't have state taxes, right? So, if all of that extra money you get for being an American is eaten up by a government that constantly digs in your pockets, here in town, I was never one to use my veterans discount, ever, at any store, because I didn't serve for accolades or awards or discounts. I served because I needed to feed myself. I served because they were giving paychecks and health care, and because it was the last place I could go. So I never, and I do believe that there's honor in military service if you do your best to keep it. And so I never used my military discount. But here inside of Tucson city limits, between city and state sales tax, it's 10%. So everything you buy costs 10% more. So the local government can do nothing. Give panhandlers a ride around the city, and then the same corner that those people are panhandling on has a sign saying, here's a phone number you can call at the government to provide homeless service to these people. You can donate there. Well, you already take it out of every purchase we make. And you're starting to make me feel like the bad guy in like the 80s movies, like during Christmas, the Santa would be ringing the bell and be like, hey, help the poor. And the rich mean guy would say, I gave at the office. And that was his way of saying, oh, I already did. I don't have to give you. But then he'd get, later in the movie, he'd be at the office and the guy would be out there ringing the bell. And he'd be like, I gave at the house. Or I gave at the bus station. And so he was just lying about what he could afford to give. And I don't want to feel like that. Now, I've been walking around my neighborhood this morning, and in this one block, there's no less than 4 churches. 4 churches. And they're never fucking open to the public. When I was a kid, a church was a place that a neglected or beaten child or beaten spouse or just a poor single mother could go any day of the week and get some version of assistance. If it was only the warmth of their heater in wintertime or the cool of their air conditioner in summer, and maybe access to, their lost and found to get some clothes for their kids, There was a way that we used to do business in this country where local communities felt responsible to take care of their neighbors. And they did. They did it willingly. And they didn't sit around, counting up the deductions they could take. They didn't go, okay, I can write this off and I can write that off. It wasn't like that. I remember I was like 6 or 7 years old and my house burned down. My 4 brothers, my 1 sister, out on the street. We moved in with our grandparents at their little 1-bedroom apartment that they had bought to downsize and save money in retirement. And we slept on air mattresses and stuff like that. And it was not fun, but I was very young, so it took less of a toll on me than it would have taken on my older siblings and stuff. But the reason why I mention that is the day after our house burned down, we went back to sift through the ashes. And when we got there, our front lawn was covered with furniture, just different household items. And the people of the neighborhood had donated it and left it there and didn't stick around to say, oh, you better thank me or anything like that. They just dropped it off. And one of the neighbors came over and my mom said, what's all this, And I said, listen, whenever you get another place, all this stuff will be here for you. We can't do much, but we can donate this stuff. So at least you don't have to worry about that. That's pretty great, America. It's pretty awesome. And that's a local thing, right? It's a local people solving local problems, helping each other out. That was a pretty good version of America, where even the people in the neighborhood who didn't know us, well, they saw the house was on fire, and they jumped in to help out. When was America great? When Biggie was alive, when Tupac was alive, when Kurt Cobain was alive, when Michael Jackson was known more for his music than for his drug problem. It was a great country when Dee Snider went before Congress. Instead of using his concert venues to tell people how to vote and what to care about and what to think, he sat down with Congress on live television and told them to get the hell out of his art, that he was going to sing and say what he wanted to sing and say. That was a pretty good fucking country. It was a pretty good country that made itself as productive as possible, where each and every person felt a responsibility to do so because they inherited a really great country by world standards. And some would say the best in the world. And they felt a responsibility to get up and do the hard yards and to take care of their neighbors and fight Congress when it got out of fucking hand and fight the media if they got out of hand and started lying to you all the time. And the way they fought was by being productive enough that the Soviet Union couldn't keep up. And the Berlin Wall fell. And overnight, seemed the time, over the span of 2 or 3, 4 years, a third of Europe was freed because we just outpaced them in the arms race, while also getting rid of as many nuclear weapons as they could get past Congress. You know, it's really hard to get past people who have a vested interest in something, and they definitely do. We don't even talk. We talk about, oh, Trump's going to start World War III. It's like, why do we still have the nukes that he can do that? Why do we have that? We have bombs that can do amazing things. And also, you know, after they go off, you'll still be able to use the water supply. We have satellites that can track people down to a meter. Far off lands. We have everything we need to win any war without nuclear weapons. And yet one man still has access to say launch, to say go. And now, I get it, Russia's out there, China's out there, there's India, Pakistan, there's plenty of countries with nuclear weapons, and we gotta be careful of that, you know, North Korea. I'm not saying get rid of all the nukes or make it a hard thing to get past to launch them in an emergency, but I guess what I'm saying is that, like, we're fighting over a lot of things these days when we still have that big problem just lying out there that nobody wants to talk about because both Republicans and Democrats get paid off to not talk about it. You know, they want you solving the same problems that they've been pretending to try to solve for the last 50 years. You know, we've been arguing about immigration as a country since our inception, pretty much. We've been arguing about equal rights, right? We've been arguing about marriage. Marriage, an inherently spiritual endeavor between two people. What does the government have to do with marriage? Why do they get to say who you get to marry or not? And why do they get to issue certificates that make it legitimate or not? But we don't talk about that because each side knows the argument that they get to say on their side of the argument. And politicians don't like to learn new things. They want to keep the same old arguments going. When was America great? I don't know, but I do remember that every child in America grows up watching television these days. And they might have Mickey Mouse or Peppa Pig or whoever the fuck, or Sesame Street, to teach them about good, better, and best, right? And the agreement America had is we're always going to do our best to do good, but we're never going to assume that this is the best it can be. But that we can get better. And if we continually iterate our country, then towards the good, we can make it better. And that's the best thing we can do. Now, I articulated the problems I'm just seeing in my own neighborhood. But I saw it at work last year. Had a guy who had to give plasma 2 times a week just so he could keep a roof over his family's head, even though he was working 50, 60 hours a week. Had that kid with the drug problem. Had 3 or 4 other kids living in halfway houses. I had another man getting paid $17 an hour, and his wife had medical bills he couldn't afford, even with the health insurance that the company gave, which was, to be honest, better than average. Because something has a hold of this country right now, and instead of recognizing that the existential threat to democracy might be millions of starving people, more so than just one guy. Well, it's not good, right? America only uses 2% of its farmland. Only 2%. And I'm not saying we rush out and abuse it all to death, but that means food could be cheaper. By far. At least that. Right? With the right programs in place to get people to go out. Why is every fucking movie about daddy losing the farm? Why is that a thing? We need food. We need farmers. We need ranchers. How about the government goes in, buys their fucking mortgage, and hands them the deed to their fucking land. And so then from then on, and don't tell me they don't have enough money, because they just keep printing it. There's no money left, for sure. Agreed. However, we need food. We have to have it. And by the way, the rest of the world does too. And we have the most fertile land on the fucking planet. And instead of talking about how to make our country productive enough to lift up the whole fucking world, we're talking about how to tear it down. Diversity, equity, inclusion. On the right, these guys are losing their fucking minds, right? On the left, these people are losing their fucking minds, right? Everybody's losing their mind about it. But America's the one place you actually don't have to worry about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're the most diverse country on the planet by the numbers. We have more people in our country with ancestries from more diverse locations in the fucking world, right? We just do. You wanna know why? Because we used to be a place people wanted to be. We weren't only a country that people ran to get away from tyranny, fascism, Nazis, monarchies. It's not all we were. We were a country that people dreamed of coming to, dreamed of getting to, because their hope for their children was a better life, and they knew it could be found here. And it seems to me that we're doing every single thing in our power to make that a false thing, to make it not true. The existential threat to democracy is people starving, okay? It's a government that won't let landowners go after their resources on their land. The people own their land, and the government says, no, you can't do that. A man wants to improve his house, and he's got to get 15 permits from the local government, pay off 12 fucking people, somebody to sign this, somebody to notarize that, da-da-da-da. All this shit to put a fucking deck in on his own damn house. It's a problem that you're not even allowed to improve what you personally own. You're not allowed to improve your own body, right? Say you think organic food is the thing that's going to make you happy and healthy. Only go out of their way to make it more expensive. You want to get in shape? You want to, maybe you just want your kid to get out and play in the grass at the local playground. Well, my local playground's right there. And it's a school. And at sundown, at the end of every school day, they lock all the fucking gates. And they turn any father who brings his children in there just so they can run in an open space into a fucking criminal. Alarms literally go off. While the Tucson City Council and the mayors are talking about going green, that same grass you're not allowed to run on is being watered 4 and 5 times a day right now to be ready for the school year. So when the parents show up on day one, they think their kid's going to a nice school. Just to put the optics up. Because they don't water it this much any other time of the fucking year, except the hottest time of the fucking year, right before school starts. America spends $1.72 trillion a year on education. If money was the answer to making people smart, we've paid it. We've paid more than enough for 100 generations of children, and yet no. kids don't even know what their penis is for. They don't know what their vagina is for. Nobody gives a fuck where you put your pud, by the way. Nobody cares. That's the problem. When you make me care about your fucking problems, your issues, your fucking dramas, it makes me not care about you, because you're trying to enforce yourself upon me. And this is a sweet land of liberty. And liberty is the freedom to do whatever you want, so long as you don't harm anybody else's rights to liberty, right? Life, liberty, property. That's the fucking rule. Has been. That's at the foundation of our country. And we're eroding it every chance we get. Now, I spent 20 years serving this fucking country, giving up my right to free speech. I leased it to my government for 20 fucking years. I leased my body, my soul, and my fucking energy and my mind to try to make our government better, to try to make our country more sustainable for a longer period of time. And I lost the fucking battle. And it haunts me every fucking day. Because all I did every day was fight to try to make things better, try to protect people who were getting pushed over and pushed around, and to try to stand up to the snakes that are inherent to any system. I was ridiculed and maligned, but I did it. I did my 20. And now I have free speech. Again. But I need a job because my retirement from my government isn't enough to pay my bills. A lot of that's my fault, I'll admit. But even if I didn't have the bills I had, it wouldn't be enough to allow me to have a mortgage. And by the way, nobody tells you this about your VA home loan guarantee, that if you retire from the military, well, and you apply for a VA home loan, they're going to deny you because you don't currently have a job. It's a guaranteed loan from the government. Like, it's guaranteed by the government. And the banks are allowed to deny a retired person a loan because they don't have a job. It's astonishing, really. It's the one thing every military member knows they're fucking promised. And the promise isn't being kept by the banks that pay off the politicians, that then make laws to make the banks able to do shit like that so that they could pay off the politicians again. And so you tell me this is an existential threat to democracy, this election. It's fucking over, kids. The democracy ended in 1994 with the National Voter Registration Act. It's been gone a long fucking time. Like, it was gone the moment Bill Clinton got elected, with the start of the age of the rock star presidents, that every president had to be a goddamn celebrity. That'd be so damn fucking cool. Selling out the Lincoln fucking bedroom in the White House to donors and shit. Setting up foundations to park their hidden campaign contributions. That's when it started. When we stopped judging people on their actual ability to do their fucking jobs, and instead let these parties put these fucking assholes in front of us all the time. And let me remind you, nobody in the Republican Party stood up for Trump after January 6th. No fucking buddy. Because they never wanted him there. But if they didn't get on board with him, they were going to go out with the fucking Democrats. That's it. There's no side. There's either the person you're voting for either is actually trying to do their job or they're not. And if your TV and your algorithm and your whatever is telling somebody so-and-so is a bad guy, everybody's a bad guy. But I've known some bad fucking dudes who are good as shit at their fucking job. Trump made mistakes. The CARE Act, for one, got damn, the worst decision he made. It was the worst attack on free Americans since the Patriot Act. And nobody fucking talks about it. It was literally just a payoff to all these fucking people and very little to the millions of Americans who were put out of work. And Trump signed it. He didn't have to sign it. He signed it. I don't hate the man. I'm just saying, everybody makes mistakes. Some mistakes are unforgivable, and that's one of them. It's too late to take that money back. They printed fucking trillions. $1.2 trillion. It's a mess. It's a mess, right? But you have all of Congress, the left and right side of the aisle, saying, hey, we need to do this. And they spend weeks not arguing over what American citizens are going to get. They were arguing over what their friends at this Kennedy Center were going to get, over how much this government function was going to get to hire new employees, or that government function. They were arguing over hiring new employees in the government while they had kicked millions of people out of their jobs. And so what that is, takes me back to the whole thing about government jobs used to be good, is that the number of people in America who, the percentage of the population that works for the government is steadily increasing, right? So even in very red states like Alaska, 25% of people in Alaska work directly for the government or through contractors. 25%. That means you're never allowed to tell the government no. A politician can't run and say, we're not going to fund this or that because we don't have the money. Because they've got a quarter of the voting bloc locked up in, no, you don't take my job away. Even if they're not doing their job. And most people in government are not doing their job. They're sucking up to their bosses. And I don't give a shit if you're active duty, reservist, or whatever. That's just the way it fucking is. Because that's the game. The system's no longer in the business of doing the thing we created it for, like defending America, or for the military, or governing the populace to maintain the rights of free citizens, like the U.S. federal government's supposed to do, or even the local homeless charities or whatever, not charities, but government programs. They're in the business of maintaining their system and making it bigger. And that's all they focus on, because the bigger they get, they get to get into that territory. It's too big to fail. The Social Security Administration, it's too big to fail, right? Well, let's talk about that. Now, I haven't looked at it in some years, but in 2018, 2019, I pulled up the numbers. It costs $100 billion for the Social Security Administration to issue out $800 billion. $100 billion to deliver $800 billion in checks. Why? If you went to your bank and they said, listen, it just costs a lot to run this bank, so we're gonna, just every $8 you put into us, we're gonna take one. You just wouldn't go there anymore, would you? But now, it's too big to fail. To try to say, nope, we're going to cut administration costs in government. We're not going to cut any benefits in welfare, Social Security, any of that shit. We're just going to fucking, bottom line, automate as much of the administration costs as fucking possible using all this modern technology, right? We're going to make sure people get their checks. We're going to make sure people get their benefits. But we're just not going to let it cost $100 fucking billion a year to do it. And immediately some politician will pop up on your TV saying, oh, they're attacking Social Security. It's not what they fucking said. It's not what they fucking said. Right? And you won't vote for them because they're attacking Social Security, because people don't legitimately have time to pay the fuck attention. They have to work too damn hard. My nephew's 19 years old. He's applied for every shit job a 19-year-old should be applying for. You know, fast food, retail stores, restaurants, so on. He can't get a job, at any of these fucking places, because the average age of the employees at these places is now over 30. Because when they tell you they're creating jobs, they're not creating jobs you want, or you'd be proud to say you had. They're creating jobs at Dunkin' Donuts. They're creating jobs at Sonic. And then they get on your TV and tell you what a good job they're doing. Look, we created 100 million jobs. Oh, who counted up those jobs? The Department of Labor. And who do they work for? Oh yeah, fucking you. I never get tired of talking about this shit, so it's never easy to find a good place to stop. But in the course of this video, I've given you examples from right where I live, right? And I've talked about larger examples, big scale examples of just how bad it's gotten out here, right? And the only judgment you need to make in terms of who to vote for is whether or not your neighbor's doing better or worse than they were 4 years ago. Are they struggling? Does everybody feel like they have to lie and say it's good? When you go down your street, are people being helped that obviously need it? And when you look in your wallet, do you have enough money to help them? Trash man's coming. It's gonna be a minute. Just paused it for a second there. The last thing I was saying is, like, when you go down your street, do people need help? And can you help them? Are you in a position where you can help them? Because if you're not in a position where you can help them, you're not living a life of abundance under this government. Because one of the greatest joys of life is being able to help people. It's being able to make things better for people. And if you can't help people and make things better for people, then you're missing out on the single greatest aspect of being an American. Is that you can lift your neighbor up, that you can hug and hold them in the dark days. And that you know you're not alone in doing it. You know? And this isn't where we're at as a country right now, as far as I can see. There's too many people to help. And all the billions and billions and trillions of dollars that we're funneling into helping is keeping them there. And so, let me give you an example of that. When I was like 11 years old, I was living in a shelter on Long Island called Help Suffolk. And it was not a shelter, it was a prison. It was the first time in my life I had to go past a security guard to leave, and I had to get permission to go anywhere or do anything from the government. And this was a place way out on nearly the end of Long Island, before the Hamptons, because they weren't going to put you where the rich people are. And it was at the end of a lonely little road in Bellport. And it was a prison complex where they kept all the lifers, the families that would never get off. Because what the government doesn't ever want you to see is families on a street corner. So what they do is they put them up in Motel 8s, Motel 6s, the side of the road motor lodge, and so on. They contract out from these people to use their rooms. These are roach motels, infested, drug dens, houses of prostitution and such. But when you don't get out of there real quick, eventually you'll land up at a place like Help Suffolk, where they hide you from the voters. Because no voter wants to see all the starving children out there. And I'm in this shelter, and I want to get out. And all my siblings want to get out too. So my brother goes and gets a job. And he's like, I'm going to work, I'm going to help the family out. And a couple of weeks later, my mom gets a letter in the mail. Since your household has this much income now, we've reduced your welfare benefits to be commensurate with it. So then my sister goes and gets a job, because we didn't get any benefit from the first job, but maybe the second one they'll keep our benefits. Maybe there's some threshold we just hit, whatever. Maybe it was a fluke. She goes and gets a job. The W-4 gets to the government. The government contacts my mother and says, well, now your household has this income. You're going to lose this amount of food stamps. We're living in a shelter. And to have any income was a crime, essentially. It was designed that no matter what you did, you'd be stuck there. No matter how hard you worked. And suddenly, like, as a child, as an 11-year-old, I understood those movies and the rap songs and about, like, how futile it was to have to work a job. And then, at some point, I turn on the television and the Republicans, Newt Gingrich in Congress, in the House of Representatives, and Bill Clinton and Al Gore, they're all talking on TV about welfare to workfare. These people are ripping off the system. They don't want to work. They don't want to work. And I'm sitting there going, now I got people working, like they want to work. And every time we get a job, they cut our funds. Even though it's minimum wage, it was $4 or $5 an hour back then. They were saying we were making too much money, that they had to take my mother's food stamps back. They had to cut it back. And then to call us lazy on top of it. And to watch both sides of the aisle do that. And to watch Americans cheer while the president's on the fucking Tonight Show or whatever playing his fucking saxophone while people are starving. Jogging to McDonald's and everybody goes, that's so cool. Well, people are fucking starving. And they're not allowed to work their way out of it with a little bit of help from the government because the program is designed to keep you exactly where the fuck you are. And by the way, my mom was no slouch. She had a stroke like a year prior, lost vision in one eye, lost use of like half of her fucking body. And the government said she was able to lift too much weight and so she should be able to work. A 49-year-old woman who had just had a stroke being told that she was lazy. She was a bookkeeper. She couldn't type anymore. She's lazy. You're all fucking lazy. You're just living on the dole and you just want to take out of our pockets. It's like, who's fucking lazy? The politicians who do nothing all the fucking time, never made a fucking thing in their lives, never been willing to work for a fucking thing in their lives. All they did was go to a university that taught them bullshit, and with money that their parents fucking had, or scholarships that somebody fucking lobbied for them to have, and they think they've done something. There's nobody more useless than a fucking corporate jack-off or a fucking politician who can't actually make anything. Some fucking sales rep or lobbyist. Those who can't do govern. And that was my childhood. So I'm not insulting Trump or Biden, but nothing's changed on that front. Zero has changed. It's only gotten worse because the welfare system, the social security system, all these different systems are designed to pay the people on it and to hire more employees to work for it. When you go to the voting booth, just ask yourself how much help you can possibly give to your community right now. How much freedom have you been given to do that? Because if you tried to donate to your local school, they're going to say, no, it has to go into a slush fund over here, and then they'll decide where it goes. You can't help your own child's school. You have to help a different school. You have to help the administrators pay themselves more fucking money. If you want to donate clothes, well, it's got to go through Goodwill, a fucking billion-dollar company that's licensed as a fucking nonprofit. If you try to give the leftover food from your local restaurant to the homeless, they'll tell you that's illegal. that it's a health violation. And if you try to give money to panhandlers, well, there's a sign right there telling you not to, that you're supposed to give at the government. That's the state of affairs. I don't give a shit what's happening in Washington, except insofar as the results I see on the ground here. I've been all over this country. I love this country. I spent my life serving this country. Good, great, greatest. Good, better, best. Our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they've done great, to the point at which we can't see how good we had it. But we can do greater than this. And it starts with not letting them tell you you're not allowed to help. As Fred Rogers said, look for the helpers, man. Look for the helpers. God bless.